From North Carolina, Mr. Walker.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If I could take it just a moment, I'd like to say thank you for your leadership. You have been the voice of justice, not just for today, but for more than 7 years. I have no doubt that you will continue to be a warrior against injustice and for the underprivileged, and I'm proud to have served with you and call you my friend. Mr. Horowitz, you previously testified that during the investigation, you found additional texts between Agent Strzok and Page on FBI devices, which the FBI had not analyzed, including text about meeting in Andy's office. I'm assuming that wasn't Andy Griffith, Andy Cohen, or Andy Rooney. The closeness of referring to Andy bothers me a little bit because evidently it says there may have been some relationships. Of course, according to your words, according to your report, somebody denies. Which one denies that meeting happened? Is it former FBI Director Andrew McCabe, or is it Peter Strzok?
I think the denial is that Mr. McCabe says he does not recall being present for that meeting.
Doesn't recall being present for that meeting. Have we investigated that further? Have you referred that to be investigated further? Because that's a pivotal point in all of this as far as what was said, who was involved in these meetings, whether there was intent or whether there was bias.
I think we have investigated, frankly, as far as we can take it, and could find evidence to see whether he was present. And you know, we've laid out here what we found ultimately.
Does it concern you that the FBI did not further investigate this issue of these discovered text messages? Seems like it raises larger questions with some of the behavior at the FBI. Does that offend you, bother you?
What has concerned us is that the FBI has this imperfect system of collecting records, has known that for some time, and needs to get it fixed. Frankly, once we started looking at these text messages, we were going to be the ones who kept digging to get them. So I didn't expect at that point the FBI to...
Fair enough. Because of Strzok's actions, I have a question. Can you with certainty express that the Hillary Clinton investigation was without bias or interference?
I cannot speak to every single decision that was made. He might have been involved in, and so I can't speak to that broader point.
So you're not saying that there wasn't bias. It appears that you are saying that bias may have existed in all of this, but not to the place that you could prove that it influenced the investigations.
Where we looked, on the decisions we looked at and the prosecutor's decision, we made the finding we felt we could make.
Do you understand why the American people are having some trouble with all of this? When you begin to talk about, well, there's biased behavior, but is it a subjective call to where that bias level may have reached, whether it influenced? The amount of time that Peter Strzok spent as the lead investigator, do you understand why the American people would be upset, at least the appearance of all of this?
Absolutely, and I'm upset at all of this. I think it's precisely why it casts a cloud over the investigation. It undermines confidence in it. All of those impacts are very serious and very significant on a very important FBI investigation. That should never happen, and it happened because of these text messages and what these employees were doing.
Sure.
It should not have occurred.
Well, thank you. And it's one of the reasons that you're respected on both sides of the aisle. I do remember, in fact, it might have been my question or another member on the House Oversight Committee, that when asked a former director, James Comey, as far as why not to bring charges, I believe his response that no reasonable prosecutor would bring charges. As good as the job that you are doing, my question to you would be, is there any room that if there was other investigations or if there was other inspections, if you will, would people, do you feel like, do you agree with James Comey on your conclusion that this would be the same conclusion, or is there room that other people, other investigators may find different conclusions?
You know, I think as you've seen in commentary about the findings in the report, what we try to lay out, this was the policy, this is how they reached the decision, and others are free to disagree with that.
When it comes to the number of FBI employees who were in contact with the journalists, was it the FBI employee or the reporter who seemed to initiate contacts that resulted in this back-and-forth conversation, or did they seem like long-term relationships?
Some of them, based on what we've seen, did not seem like a, well, let me just, looking at the charts here, you can see these are not, generally speaking, one call. So I would leave it at that. We're looking at the that deeper question.
When you say you're looking at it, does that mean there may be warrant more investigations for some of those who've been players in this situation?
There are active investigations ongoing by our office.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield back.